fun. I don't know why I did the countdown like I was Count Dracula. I don't know where that came from. I honestly have no idea where that came from.
I'm sad nobody will get to hear it because it was still counting down. But the 3, 2, all you were missing was Oh wow!
Shock's been watching Sesame
Street.
I don't know where
apparently. That came from. I haven't been, that was so randomly in my head. It just popped into my head. I saw the thing and it was just like, go for it, say it.
Always just go for it. That's the rule of thumb. Just go for it.
Anyway, welcome to Count Dracula's version of Cars and Kicks podcast, guys. I am Count Dracula, apparently, or also known as Jacques Slade, and today we've got a good show for you guys. It's starting a little bit off the rails. But we got a good. I got the intro. Sorry, I'm getting it. See,
this is all
Count
on
Dracula
brand,
messed me up. Yeah, Count Dracula thing just it threw me off. All right, the intro. All right, so this. Hopefully this comes out the way that I hear it in my head. I haven't tried it out loud yet. So the way that I hear it in my head is one way. But
you want me to count you in? 3.
Yeah. So it's I'm gonna have a little sound effects here.
Oh.
So it's so hold on.
Oh,
it's
boy.
coming. All right. All right. Let me get into my space. All right. This is my guitar. I don't know if people can see my guitar. It's like,
do you need me to back you up on this and throw a little guitar riff?
This is my guitar here. It's okay. It's very like 90s ish kind of feel. So it's like cars, kicks, cars and kicks. Just keeping it tight. I want to keep it tight.
Well, okay.
All right.
I think that's 90s, right? Yeah. That's 90s, or is it early? It's like
I think that's timeless. I think that's what that is. So, well, it took you how long to come up with that one again? Just out of curiosity.
I was in the car. It just popped into my head in the car, and like for some reason, like 90s, like kids, sort of like teeny bopper sitcoms were in my head.
There you go.
Exactly.
So they always have that like kind of guitar riff where they're like,
and then it goes up at the very end with the long note hold.
Cars and kicks. Yeah. There it is.
I get it, and I understand the inspiration now. Fantastic.
And he hates it, obviously. Josh. Welcome to the show. Yeah, he hates it. Welcome to the show, guys. Thanks everybody for listening to the Cars and Kicks podcast. We got a great episode for you guys today. Lots of cool stuff has been happening. These two went somewhere really cool. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to go, so we'll fill you in on that. Eric's hat is a clue if you guys are actually watching,
which
I might change
listening.
By the way, because I got a gigantic head and this dad hat does not look great on camera, so there might be a wardrobe change at some point during this episode. Just heads up.
Yeah, and if we're being that transparent, I feel the same way about dad hats. I have a big ass head, so I don't really wear them that often.
I'm right there with you guys.
So, Welcome to group therapy / Cars and Kicks podcast, guys, where we talk about our insecurities live on the air. And then we have some news. Got a lot of great news coming in. Some things that I'm really excited about that I don't know if the guys are going to be as excited about it. I think they'll appreciate it, but for me, it's like the kind of stuff. It's the kind of car stuff that I really like, a mix of the old and the new, if that gives anything.
Okay.
But enough of me rambling. Let me pass it off to the co-hosts who really are the reason why this show exists. I'm here, obviously, to make theme songs and to sound like Count Dracula. So I'll pass it off to you, Nick, to introduce yourself and let the people know what's popping.
I'm Nick Ingvall. I'm kind of the representative of both sides of this. Cars and Kicks, but I was just going to say your theme song actually was straight up like Saved by the Bell, like Screech Has a Band kind of vibe. That's what I was feeling with it. So yeah, I don't know if that's good or bad.
Yeah, there you go. You get it. Just build him up to knock him down. Just build him up to knock him down.
It's all part of the creative process, buddy. Not all of them can be hits. Well, I'm on that note. As Jacques just dies slowly over there. I'm Eric Valdez. I'm the resident car guy here on Cars and Kicks. And like he alluded to, we got a really great show. We're going to be recapping an event that Nick and I went to, and we're starting something new this week. We didn't rehearse this, but you guys want to try like on 3 to see if we can all say it in stereo. Ready? This is called the quick hit news bit.
Yeah.
That was close. The quick hit news bit.
There we go. We should have probably rehearsed. For those listening and not watching, this is going to be exciting. Yeah, the quick hit news bit. I just came up with that before we started the show. We obviously didn't rehearse the name of this segment, but we're going to fill you guys in on everything that happened this week or relatively close to this week in the automotive and sneaker world. So why don't we start them off with I don't know. Let's go kicks first this time. What do y'all got?
We can start off with news at NIL. For those that listen to the show that don't know what NIL is name, image, and likeness. It's all the hubbub that's been made about the NCAA and college athletes getting paid. And one benefit of an NIL deal is USC. I guess she's not really a freshman anymore. I guess she's technically a sophomore now. Juju Watkins. She extended her deal with Nike. She's been wearing Nike on the court. USC is a Nike school. I almost feel like USC is a Kobe Nike school. I feel like they wear Kobe's more than they wear Nikes, so to speak. But she extended her deal with Nike. And from some of the reports that we've seen, it is one of the largest women's deals in basketball, period, not just in college, just in basketball, period. So they're really banking a lot on Juju, which they should, because she's an absolute star. Like, her game is incredible. She had an incredible first season as a freshman, and really looking forward to seeing what happens. I think, honestly, if you're in, and I said this on Hard Pass, but if you're a woman in sports right now and you're like nice, like your game can talk that talk, you are going to be in a great position when it comes to NIL and this next generation of sports and brand deals and stuff like that.
It's about time, man. Like, it's about time.
Yeah.
What year is it? 2024, and we're still fighting for women to have some sort of equality when it comes to pay and representation in sports and recognition in sports and stuff. So yeah, man, it's nice to see that.
I just hope that it's sustained this time, right? Like, we've seen it bubble up in the past, like in the 90s, you had this like big push towards women's hoops specifically. And then it just kind of fizzles out and the brand moves on from it. And it's like, how do we keep the brands accountable for that kind of stuff? But that's a whole different type of podcast. So.
Yeah. But I also think there's more social, currency in women's sports now. But then also, I think on the brand side, I think the conversation around women has changed since back then. And so I think brands, it's almost, I would hope that it's actually part of the marketing plans now, as opposed to where it seems like an add-on and a special edition. I would hope that women's sports is now a part of the budget and a part of the plan for the future now in a real way. So we'll see how that goes, and hope the best. Hope for the best for Juju and what she's been cooking up.
Yeah. Nick, what you got this week?
I was going to shout out Under Armour, the Curry brand. I think the first place I saw it was Soul Retriever, but they were talking about how Curry, Stephen Curry's signature shoe, the 12 shoe, just came out, but it's the first time ever that a current player with his own brand, Curry brand, was playing against a player wearing his own signature shoe from that brand. So De'Aaron Fox signed with Curry brand about a year ago, and his first shoe kind of came out. Like, I don't know if it's released yet, but it's in the process. And they had a matchup last night, which is just kind of interesting to think about. I mean, it's a kind of a nuanced story, but it's really cool to think that the evolution of sneakers is getting to the point where an actual like athlete in the league can have a brand and have somebody else have their own signature shoe under that brand. Because, you know, we think a lot about Michael Jordan with that kind of stuff in the past, but really that's kind of even more nuanced in the sense that those were team shoes. They weren't necessarily a signature shoe. And then, you know, Jordan wasn't playing in his signature shoe. You know, like he was playing retro product, and there was just a lot of gray areas. But like to see like two guys with signature shoes from, you know, one of the guys obviously like success in getting that Curry brand off the ground through Under Armour, you know, it's just a really cool kind of fact to throw out there. And I'm sure people will have thoughts, and there might even be examples of Michael Jordan playing against people that have maybe a shoe we consider a signature shoe, but like this is literally like the De'Aaron Fox shoe and the Stephen Curry shoe, not like a, you know.
Yes, that was going to be my take on it was like, yes, all true. It's all 100% true. It is the first time, but I think back then, I don't think they were giving out signature shoe deals in the same way that they give out signature shoe deals now. I feel like there are a lot more athletes and a lot more people that are getting signature shoe deals. So the possibility of something like this happening is more likely. Like back then when they did the Team Jordan stuff, technically, I think all of those guys could have had Jordan signature shoes, but I think the direction of the brand at that time was to, how are we going to expand the Jordan line? Let's do these Team Jordans. And that's how those guys kind of got those, because they all got like crazy PEs of the Team Jordans, but they didn't have like their own signature shoes. It's an interesting, like you're right, you said, it's an interesting distinction. And I think there's obviously in the sneaker world, and for those that aren't in the sneaker world, like this probably sounds like the most like in the weeds kind of conversation you could ever have. But I think, you know, it is the first time. To be fair, it is the first time. But I also think a lot of those Team Jordan guys, they could have had a signature shoe if the direction of the brand was to like expand signature shoe lines. Because was D Wade the first guy to get a Jordan signature? Who was the first guy to get a Jordan signature shoe? Do you remember?
Well, I mean, that's kind of the you know, the asterisk, if you will. Like, I was thinking about Eddie Jones, right? Like he had the Jordan Jumpman Quick 6 or whatever it was. That shoe was like during Michael Jordan's career. But it wasn't, you know, we all know that he wore it, but he wasn't the exclusive wearer of that shoe, and it wasn't branded as his. So the reason why I think this is really an interesting topic that we'll probably talk more about in the future too, although it's super nuanced and in the weeds for the sneaker side of things, what's interesting is like we do a lot of this kind of stuff in the car side of things too, right? Like walking through, you know, Luft with Eric, getting to hear some of the nuances between all these different Porsches. People love to get nerdy about these things. And that's one of the things that I think like just solidifies like the similarities between the two worlds that we bring together with the show.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to dive into Luft a little bit more in a bit, as that's going to be the main topic of the show. But kind of going off a little bit more on some other quick hit news bits. Did y'all see this? I know Jacques was excited about this Bronco retro freewheeling thing that Ford just announced. Yeah, that styling, that retro styling, the kind of colored stripes on the side and everything, that's hot. I like that.
I absolutely love this. I love this.
You know, and this to me is what happens. We talked a bit about this on the pod a while back, when you have a car guy at the helm of a company. And I don't know if y'all saw, also kind of related to this, Daniel Mack. Everybody knows who Daniel Mack is, right? The guy that walks up and says, excuse me, like, you know, what do you do for a living, when people have cool cars and stuff? Yeah. He was at an event recently and walked up to Jim Farley, the CEO of Ford, who happened to be there not debuting, but with the Ford Mustang GTD. And Jim had just won his racing class in his Cobra. He was proud to say he beat the Corvettes. So, you know, a little rivalry there, Detroit rivalry. Yeah. But you just see him like, you know, here he is, CEO of Ford, and he still geeks out with this young kid who's got a passion for cars, and they both jump in the Mustang GTD, and he starts revving it up and talking about the line lock and some of the features and the cantilever suspension. And so when you got a guy like that heading something up, that's when you get these cool things like this retro Bronco. So kudos to Ford for doing that. It's a cool move.
That's super dope to me to see like someone at his level like engage with like the world of social media and that audience in that way. And I'm sure his team was behind it and told him like, oh, this is something that you should do. But you know, a lot of times some people don't get that, even if they are like, this is something you should do. And they're kind of like, I don't really, it's not kind of like my thing. But he genuinely, from what I've seen of him online, this feels like something that he would be like, oh yeah, let's do it. I would love to do it. Like he gives that kind of energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I will not name names or companies, but I've been at fairly recently at an automotive related event with another CEO of another company who would not have been open to something like this. Let's just say that. So it's interesting to see those different dynamics and kind of how the product is reflected based on personality and everything. So yeah, it's super dope move.
Why do you guys think that is? Why do you think someone would? Why do you think that is? Why do you think that whoever this person that you're talking about? Mm-hmm. What is it? Maybe about their brand, or what's it about their personality that would make them be like, in the words of the Michael Jordan meme, fuck them kids.
I mean,
Nick wants to chime in on this. Go for it.
I'm going to shameless plug here a little bit. I just wrote about this in one of the newsletters that I send out. But leadership is intimidating, man. Like there's such a formula for keeping the king, you know, so to speak, out of, you know, the rest of the business when it comes to CEOs and high level executives. And I think it's not typically it's not something where they're comfortable being vulnerable like that, you know, like being just an average person, you know, feeling like a normal person, so to speak, when they're put on this pedestal within the hierarchy of business, at least in America. And I think that like it kind of leads into a lot of this kind of evolution of what CEOs are expected to be and are becoming. You know, like people will think of CEO and they'll think of an Elon Musk, and like that is not what I think of as a CEO. But like, I don't know if you guys have ever, I think his name is Everett is his name. He runs Kickstarter. They run like a 4-day work week. He is like public with everything, shares so much about what he does in life in context of the company and all those things. And we're seeing this shift away from that kind of old school mentality of corporate, you know, hide behind the corporate walls, to where like people want to see the people. Ford could put out 1 million cars, but like the reality is I'll be interested if Jim Farley does cool stuff like this. You know, the same thing can be said about just about anything. And I think we're attracted to the people behind the brands. And as much as like we've built up what brands mean in America over the years, and, you know, like capitalism has kind of pushed people behind the scenes, I think we're at a point where we're all craving that connection with other human beings, whether it's through cars or kicks or through, you know, our work, our business. And I think the more people build in public, whatever they are building, the more likely are that they're going to find success, because people want to follow along and see people succeed, because there's just plenty of stories where people don't. And like, if you don't know the story behind it, then somebody else will put their story out and you'll follow those people instead.
Yeah. It's interesting. You mentioned the CEO factor and keeping the king kind of away from stuff like that. And you mentioned Elon Musk. He's a love him or hate him. and I'm definitely on one side of that that spectrum. He's a bit of an evil genius, and he's done, he's pushed the boundaries in a lot of ways, and I think that's pushed other people, and there is some good to be found from that. He's also, Tesla is supposed to, by the time you hear this, they will have supposedly unveiled their cyber cab, I guess is what we're loosely calling it, along with a rideshare platform. Now, he's been talking about autonomous vehicles and all this other stuff for years, and the promise of being 100% autonomous for years. And apparently we're going to find out. As of this podcast, we haven't gotten definitive information, but by the time it airs, you'll probably see the articles, and we'll, if he makes good on the promise, we'll find out. But either way, it's just, again, it's the difference in people at the helm and how they choose to lead or how they choose to innovate is always, it's fascinating, because it's just a really nice glimpse into kind of human psyche. All of us have our own opinions and the ways we do things. Everybody sits there and does the quote unquote bench racing of, like, whether it's sports, whether it's whatever. Oh, I would have done that, or I could do this better, or blah, blah, blah. Yep. But a few people actually make it to the top, and they get the chance to revolutionize the world in their industries, and they go about it different ways. And it's a fascinating social experiment to watch it play out now because of social media, et cetera. One quick note on that, talking about another interesting CEO, just want to give I'm going to tie this in a little bit with the Luft thing we're going to talk about shortly. But in LA for the weekend, I flew in for Luftgekühlt 10, and the guys over at Rusnik in Pasadena, Rusnik Ineos, gave me an Ineos Grenadier. I don't know if you guys have seen this. Nick got to see it in person, but it is a new SUV. It's been it was released this year, but it looks kind of like a merger between an old Land Rover Defender and a G-Wagon. But it is brand new. It is not a retro per se, even though it's retro inspired. It's got a BMW powertrain. It is built in France. And the name Grenadier came from a conversation about this at a bar in Ireland or something. That was the name of the bar. And so this guy, the founder and CEO of Ineos, the car company, is also the CEO of Ineos, the chemicals company, which is worth billions of dollars. And he basically, the kind of loose story goes, that he wanted something kind of retro cool, like loved the old Defenders, et cetera, but he wanted modern reliability. So he just started his own car company. And so when you kind of have the money and the power and you decide to make moves like that, why not? And I admire that. And it was a cool experience driving it. It drives a bit tractor-ish, which is not a negative thing. That's kind of the experience you expect when you look at the vehicle and kind of look at what it's capable of. I unfortunately wasn't able to go do any serious off-roading this trip. Maybe when I get back out to LA, we'll go find some stuff to play in the desert or whatever. But it was a cool experience and people loved it. It was a crowd pleaser everywhere I went. I had to allow an extra 5-10 minutes because I'd get stopped and ask questions about it and everything. So all that is to say, it's cool when people push the boundaries a little bit and do something a little different that sparks these conversations. So again, thanks to Rusnik out in Pasadena, Rusnik Ineos, and the Ineos company for throwing that vehicle my way for a few days while I was out in LA.
Yeah, this car looks mad cool.
Right?
This is my energy. This is my energy. Like the old school retro vibe. This is 100% my energy. Don't get me wrong. I love a techie future looking car, but something like this, I would love this. I love, what is it? It starts at what, 76 looks like here?
75, 76K. Yeah. And then of course, as you start adding on, it goes up from there. But it's cool, man. It's a different take. There's a ton of different SUV options in that price point. Obviously, it's not cheap, but it's a cool take if you want to be different and you don't necessarily need the cushiest of rides and the most modern of tech, so to speak.
Yeah, because I love the Land Rover, but the new ones almost look too sleek. They look too clean for me. Yeah. And I don't know if it's because of when I grew up that they were boxier and they had a more boxy, sharper angles on them. Yep. But the new ones look like luxury vehicles, or as opposed to those old ones, they look like more military, more like off-road-ish. Now I don't know if I would want to take the way that Land Rovers look now, if I would want to take those off road. They don't feel like that's where they belong. Kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we can. I'll talk to my guys out there, and we'll see if we can get you one for a few days to go sample, Jacques.
Yeah.
I'm sure it won't be a problem.
Oh yeah, take it to the golf course.
Yes, indeed. Before we get too involved in a whole lot of other stuff, we're going to talk to Luft. A couple other quick notes. There is a very cool event coming up with my friends over at the Motoring Club. That'll be the weekend following. Well, you'll hear this on Monday. So this coming weekend, called Cars and Kicks.
Yeah, good name, by the way.
I don't want to say they took inspiration from our podcast for their event, but I'm not going to say they didn't. Shouts out to Eddie at Hype Drive, who is also involved in this. They're collaborating with Jeff Staple. They're going to have a car show / Kicks show at the Motoring Club. Sounds like a really good time. Will we be invited to do a live podcast? I don't know. Eddie, if you hear this, hit me, my man. But either way, going to be a cool event this coming Saturday at the Motoring Club in LA. So maybe we'll see y'all out there.
And then Nick, you had one more story about the alternative materials. What was the alternative materials story?
Before we get into that, I was just going to say, also got Formula Drift, the grand finale this weekend. So a lot of big stuff happening in LA over the weekend.
Yeah, we got to get Jared Deanda, who's been the voice of Formula Drift for years. He's been wanting to come on the pod. So Jared, shouts out, my man. We're going to see you, and we'll have you on the pod here soon. You do a recap for the full season.
Also shout out to Red Bull for firing Ricardo. Appreciate the
man.
Yeah, let's not talk about it because I don't want to get emotional.
We're never going to get to the Luft recap show if we go down that road. Man,
I don't want to be this to turn into an angry podcast. So I'm not gonna.
Skoda, European car maker, kind of most known for rally inspired or building rally cars, running in the WRC, unveiled a concept car this week that is uses flax as a part of the carbon. I don't know how you would explain that, Eric. It's like,
I saw this. It was called biocomposite panels that they use. So instead of weaving strands of carbon, they've woven strands of flax to create these composite panels, these body panels, etc. I know this has been used in like high-end audio for quite some time. I had some Focal speakers, a brand of, if you're a car audiophile geek, you'll know what I'm talking about. But they used this kind of flax material in there for its rigidity and responsiveness to sound, etc. I imagine somehow that translates over to body panels. So yeah, Nick, I saw a picture of this, but tell us a little bit more about it.
I mean, it just seems super interesting. The car itself is really kind of like next level performance for a full electric vehicle. It's a 2-motor all-wheel drive based on the VW ID platform, which is, Skoda is owned by Volkswagen, I believe, right? And yeah, it just seems like a really cool kind of step towards like performance for electric vehicles. I know we've talked about it at length before, but I feel like Hyundai is like kind of the only company in the States putting out cars that give you that like more enthusiast feeling from an electric vehicle, and not just like we threw this programming in it and now your Tesla Plaid does, will literally kill you if you turn this on and slam on the gas type of. I guess you don't press a gas accelerator, slam on the accelerator, throttle,
accelerator, yeah,
propulsion pedal.
Yeah, gonna have to change my whole lingo around with this, but it's just a really interesting car, and to see that they're doing stuff like that for a concept, I think these alternative materials are always an interesting conversation because it happens in the car world a ton. It happens in the sneaker world a ton. And yeah, just kind of want to hear what you guys think about this stuff.
Yeah, I have two questions. This kind of leads me to two things. One, yes, it happens in, I guess it's not two questions. I have a thought and a question. I'm just confused all day today. So first, it happens in the sneaker world a lot. They have there's been a push in the sneaker world to do things more sustainably, using more like vegan materials for the leathers that they use on shoes. So you have stuff like pineapple leather, you have mushroom leather, you have palm tree leather, you have leathers made out of all sorts of things. And from the stuff that I've seen, the mushroom leather seems to be the best reproduction of the leathers that I've seen. Dom, aka shoe surgeon, did a shoe out of these different like mushroom leathers, and it just looks really fantastic. The leather quality looks incredible. The material looks durable. Like it has that nice leather feel, the unfinished feel versus the polished. It just looks really, really good. But the second question I had was, now, Skoda is not like a racing car company, but when I was reading up about this, they were saying that it was lighter. The material was lighter than the regular like carbon fiber material that they use. But aren't there, when you race cars, and I know you've raced cars, Eric, and you've raced cars too, Nick, isn't there like a weight requirement? Like, is the weight requirement as far as lightness, or can it be only so heavy? Isn't there is there a range, or how does that work?
There is, and it's a solid question, because a lot of people don't quite understand. Yes, the short answer to the question there is a minimum weight requirement. A few races ago in Formula One, if you recall, George Russell lost his win. He won the race and was disqualified for being like 2 kilograms underweight or something crazy. Now, there's a very long explanation to this, but kind of to for time's sake and everything to explain it, weight matters, and where weight is in the car matters even more. So if, let's say, you have 1,000 kilogram minimum weight limit, if you can save a lot of money on the a lot of weight on the body panels, et cetera, you're able to put more of that into the lower area of the car, whether it be for structural rigidity, the engine itself, or whatever it is, you can place weight more towards the center of the vehicle. The lower and the more towards the center of the vehicle it is, the more predictable the handling is going to be. If you ever, I guess, case in point, if you ever rode a bicycle to school as a kid, and, when you're riding your bike with your friends and everything, it was fun, and, you could do jumps and all sorts of shit. If you threw a backpack full of books on to ride to school, suddenly that bicycle didn't handle the same way. And that was a big reason. Yeah, you added weight, but it was also real high up. So when you're turning, the center of gravity is way up here versus down low, and it affects the handling dramatically. So again, I can go down a whole rabbit hole with that, but that is basically the real reason why composites exist and why lighter materials exist, is so that you can place the weight differently within the vehicle.
So it would be more of a shifting of the weight from the body. So if they made the body lighter, they would, because they have to meet that minimum, they would just shift that weight to the frame or a frame of the car, I guess. Is that, would that be more, is that correct?
In some of the classes that I raced in, the vehicles are kind of purposely built underweight, so then you could add ballast, right? You could add, literally, sometimes we just used, plates from a gym or whatever, or diving weights or something, to then make up the difference. If our car was, say 100 pounds underweight, then we could figure out where we wanted to place that weight. So if we wanted to put diving weights in the frame rails on the right front, or put 90 pounds worth of plates, iron plates, in where the passenger seat would be, to kind of balance my body weight out. I weigh a lot more than 90 pounds, but you know what I'm saying? Like, you can move the weight to different parts of the car so that you can adjust the handling accordingly.
Interesting. Yeah. That's cool. This is the whole the science of car racing, I guess. This is the physics part.
And some racing bodies, like the JGTC, I don't know if they still do this, but Japanese touring cars used to actually basically add penalty weight. If you won a race, then you would get more weight to try to even out the field, so that you didn't have like these dominant kind of teams that you see in like Formula One right now. So I think it's a really interesting kind of topic that we could deep dive on at some point.
Yeah, they do that a lot in in a lot of series, IMSA and some others too, where it's called BOP, or balance of performance. So if a car is dominant, and just to kind of make the playing field a little less Max Verstappen Red Bull era-ish, where you can just predict the winner every race, they do, like Nick said, either add weight, restrictor plates to the air fuel mixture, et cetera, to reduce horsepower, different ways of making it a little more kind of evening the playing field, which there's been a whole rabbit hole here, but there's the school of thought is it makes for better racing when all of the vehicles are very similarly powered, et cetera. But in the example of Formula One, I mean, the whole idea behind Formula One is to push the boundaries to the very limit, and you've got a set budget to work with. If your engineers happen to be smarter than somebody else and they come up with something super innovative, why should they be punished for that? So again, that's a whole other episode really right there. But yeah, that's kind of how it works in racing.
God, we got to do an episode on all of this, just that really break this down. I would love to get like maybe an ex F1 engineer, because I know how sensitive they are about.
Oh, they're not going to talk about anything current.
Being able to talk about anything or say anything. It's so
But
annoying.
Imagine, just real quick, imagine going and like saying, okay, well, Steph Curry is the best ball handler and shooter in the NBA. So we're going to add 5 pounds worth of weights to his sneakers. People would lose their minds. They'd be like, what are you talking about? But it's kind of that idea,
I think it's also really interesting to think about how consumers understand this. I'm thinking back to one of the early episodes where, Jacques, you were blown away that Eric and I could feel if you had 30 pounds in a car with you, right? But we're talking about cars that are significantly lighter. Like in a race car, you're talking about, 2,000 to 3,000 pounds. Old Hondas or old, anything, Japanese kind of import style. You're talking about a car that could be anywhere from 1,800 pounds to 2,500 pounds. Modern cars, your Tesla RX Rivian probably weighs 7,000 to 8,000 pounds. So like the percentage that you would add by adding an extra human being is so small that you don't feel it. But when the percentage of, if you're driving a 2,500 pound car and you add a 250 pound person, that's 10% of the weight of your entire car. It's much more like tangible when you're driving those types of cars, which is, for me, that's why I think everybody should go out and experience driving like quick, nimble, that's why the Miata is so popular, right? Like you get to really feel what is intended to be, like high-end sports cars in a car that is just like super drivable and very like visceral feeling when you drive it.
Yeah. I've got to get there. Cause like, I imagine this is how people feel when I'm talking about a sneaker, and I'm like, oh, like the toe off, you can feel the toe off, and you can feel how it rolls from the ball of your foot to your heel, or you can feel the cushioning, and you can feel the responsiveness. And
absolutely,
I get annoyed when I'm watching like car reviews on YouTube, and there's like, oh, it feels like it kind of, and they're always British for some reason. It feels like it kind of lumbers along. It's very, very blocky, like a boat. I'm like, whatever. Just
can we get canceled for that?
Probably. So I apologize.
We love our British
fans.
Please forgive me. Please forgive me.
I apologize. Yeah, it was a terrible accent. It was an Australian, British, and Jamaican at the same time. Yeah, it's just terrible. Anyway, moving on. So these two got to do something really cool, and I wasn't able to attend. They got to go to a very special event in Los Angeles over on the Universal lot, which is super cool. Guys, could you go ahead, just break it down? Like, just give me all the FOMO in the world right now. Go ahead, just give it to me.
You even I mean, you are a massive car guy. We all know this, Jacques. The audience knows that. So I don't, if you weren't, however, you still would have enjoyed this experience. It's this was Luftgekühlt, and I'm butchering that because I don't speak German very fluently, but Luftgekühlt translates to air-cooled, basically, is what it translates to in English. And so it's a celebration of air-cooled Porsches. For those that don't know, if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably a pretty diehard car guy, and you probably already know that, so I'm just telling you things that you don't need to be told again. But this was their 10th year, Luft 10, as they called it, and they did it at the Universal Studios backlot for the second time. I think it was Luft 4, maybe 6. I don't remember when it was out there last time, but man, I got to tell you, it is more than just a car show. It's a full on experience, really. Pat Long and Jeff Swart have outdone themselves with this one. I think I've been to 4 or 5 of the 10 years of Luft, different places, and it's not only the collection of cars there. It's the caliber of cars. It's also what differentiates it from just, some people would be like, why am I going to pay to go to a car show? Well, first of all, half the stuff there, you're not going to see at your local Cars and Coffee for free in some Starbucks parking lot. For me, it's the race cars. I mean, there's some crazy, cool, historical road cars and whatnot, but when you walk around and you come around the corner and you see a 962C or a 917K in this makeshift light box that's presented like a piece of jewelry, or a 934.5 just sitting out there on the street next to some 356 that had tracks and skis on the front that was parked in front of a house that I actually shot in years and years ago. I found that out. Nick and I were walking by. I was like, wait a minute, I filmed something in that house. So the whole package deal of these incredible cars parked on these make-believe streets, because you literally wind through the back lot and you're in small town America, and then you turn the corner and it's like Europe in the 1500s, and then you go through an old Western town, and it's just, the whole spectacle of it is incredible. It's one of those events, automotive events, if you are a car person, that should be on your bucket list, because it's just a blast, man.
Yeah, I mean, I just reiterate all of that exactly. I mean, it just to put it into context, this is 12, 15 blocks worth of Cars and Coffee and in your local neighborhood, all different settings, throwback to Western sets, the Back to the Future clock tower, old Porsche repair service center vibes, barns. Just the whole thing was just so big and so massive. We didn't even really get to all of the cars because there's just so much of it, it really is just a next level experience, because you can't have that experience in another setting. That's the thing about this particular Universal lot, and having a car show there, it just made me think, wow. I think I told Eric and Cam as we're getting ready to leave, I'm like, yeah, I just want a whole town to I just want to build a whole town so we can do more Cars and Coffees or a Cars and Kicks event in this tiny, town.
Yeah.
There's so much wow factor. So much wow factor.
Yeah, I think just obviously I didn't get a chance to go, but my imagination just goes so many places, and thinking about all of the different backlots and then having all of these beautiful cars. It's almost like the backlot just it informs the car in a totally different way, from seeing it in one place versus seeing it somewhere else. It informs the perception of how you see the car, the story that you receive from the car. That's such a unique thing. And I didn't think I would think about it that way until you guys just said that, but I didn't think about all of it in perspective. But when you see the cars in a 50s set, or in a 80s set, or in a 90s set, or in a 70s, and the Western, and all those different things that you said, it just tells a completely different story. And that is freaking cool. I really, thanks for the FOMO, guys.
It's you're welcome. There's always Lift 11. I don't know where that one's going to be yet. They haven't announced it, but the thing too is it's gotten so big that it's evolved into almost we mentioned Monterey Car Week on the podcast a couple times. It's not quite at that level because it's not as diverse. It won't ever be that big because you're simply celebrating air-cooled Porsches. They've branched off and done air water, which celebrates more of Porsche's lineage, going into water-cooled Porsches, which is 996s and above. Excuse me. But beyond that, it's evolved into like a whole weekend's worth of events around LA. I was invited to come out a little bit earlier to host an event for Porsche Classic. Now, we've talked a bit about Porsche Classic a couple episodes ago when we were mentioning retros and why car companies don't do retros of things. My buddy Jonathan invited me to come out and host this kind of national event. So what the Porsche Classic Challenge is a competition really between dealerships, Porsche Classic dealers across the country and, well, North America. So I guess Canada and Mexico are included as well. And they have these local competitions for the dealers to either, they have, three different categories. They have preservation, which is taking an old Porsche, not really completely restoring it, but making it as, taking something and kind of keeping all the original parts and panels on it. You can repaint some things, but I think 25% of it has to remain original, et cetera. Then there's the whole restoration part of it, which is a full nut and bolt restoration. And then they have another category that they've now started offering called individualization, which is kind of what it sounds like. You can commission Porsche to build you something kind of the way that you envision it. So it is going to like Dom at the shoe surgeon or whatever. Instead of just saying, hey, can you restore these Jordan 1s? It's saying, hey, can you take my, 85 G-body Carrera, and I want it to have modern versions of old Fuchs and, mini light wheels. And I want to have a Gulf livery painted on it. And I want it to be punched out to a 3.8 and all these other things, all these terms that I know, exactly what I'm talking about, Jacques.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
But, getting to basically go to a dealership and have Porsche use all Porsche parts to create kind of a Porsche hot rod. And so getting to kind of go to this event prior to Luft, it's almost like the opening band of Luftgekühlt, and seeing they had 9 cars there, 3 from each category that had won their local area competitions throughout North America. Yeah. And I had the honor, thankfully I didn't have to be a judge because it was really hard to kind of pick from all of that, but I had the honor of presenting the winners for the overall competition. And it's big stuff for these dealers. They take it very seriously because it's not just getting a trophy to put in your case in your dealership, it also amounts to allocations. Now, that comes into play because if a certain dealership is, I don't remember the ins and outs of it, but if they're allowed or allocated, an additional GT car, whether it be a GT3 RS or a GT2 RS or something, or they get an extra Turbo S or something, that basically means here, Porsche is going to give you another vehicle to sell. Well, guess what? Your dealership makes money on those sales. So it's not just the bragging rights, but there's actual monetary factor involved in it too. And the biggest thing for me was the story behind all of these cars. And, again, it's dealerships building Porsches, if at its, bare bones kind of way of explaining it, but you meet the technicians behind it that worked on the car, that put countless hours into them. And, the cars that, like the preservation car came from a Gaudin Porsche of Las Vegas, and they had this crazy story of this 86 911 Targa that when they bought it from the, I guess, third owner, the car was a convertible, and it had like chrome Anteras on it and like a black car bra. It was like very 90s, period correct. But the biggest thing was the fact that when they looked at the VIN, the car was not really supposed to be a cabriolet. Somebody like cut the Targa bar and took the rear window out, made it a cabriolet at some point during their ownership, and just kind of customized it the way they wanted to. Mind you, this car back then, it was just a used Porsche at one point, right? Well, when they started doing the digging, it was one of 7 spec'd the way it was spec'd. It's, again, I can go really geeky with codes, but the M491, which is like the turbo look wide body car, M470, I think, was a spoiler delete, all these different codes that really amounted to a very rare Porsche that somebody had hacked up. So they took it, they reconverted it into a Targa and didn't restore it completely. You could still see some patina on it and everything like that, but they preserved this piece of Porsche history and created this immaculate black over black Targa that we all got to see. There was a 77 Turbo Carrera that was in the restoration category that literally looked like I wasn't born in 77, right? So I couldn't have walked into the dealership and seen one, brand new, but this was the next best thing. The car was perfection. Like every nut and bolt had been addressed to bring it back to the way it was in 1977. And that was really cool to see. And then the car I was kind of describing in the individualization category, it belonged to a doctor. It was Porsche of Inglewood that won that category. And the doctor envisioned this kind of Steve McQueen-esque Gulf liveried 911. And so he brought the donor car in, and along with the dealership and their technicians and stuff, they created this really cool hot rod. And it was just, again, fun to see a brand like Porsche embracing, putting up a competition like this for dealers to kind of get involved in, and then allowing them to not just restore cars, but also bring their creativity to it. And all of that kind of, their hand wasn't necessarily forced. I don't want to say that, but all that started because of this passion that the fans, the owners, et cetera, had probably the last decade for the 911. And that's what started Luftgekühlt. That's what started Singer and Gunther Works and all these other companies it all came from the passion for an automobile, it just makes for a really cool story.
That's amazing. Imagine if sneaker brands celebrated their owners and their owners like creativity the way that like Porsche does. That would be insane.
Right?
I know we talked about it, I think like maybe 2-3 episodes ago, but like Nike, Adidas, they need to have a shoe surgeon on staff that can do these restorations, that can do these customizations and get all these things back to where they are. Maybe Nike creates something called, I don't know, Nike Reserves or whatever it is, and just let people send in old sneakers and they bring, that would be so,
it's such a cool idea,
Yeah, now it's making me mad.
I mean, you kind of see that within the community already in sneakers, right? Like my friend Andrew, aka Sneaker Preservation Society, like has done this with a few of his pairs and brought them back to wearable condition. And you see this a lot with like some of the like old school collector types that are like, okay, well, I need to get, the right outsole midsole combination to restore these. Like I've got a few pairs that like are no longer wearable, but I will absolutely restore them to have them just because they're not going to come back again, And I think like that concept of having somebody that kind of heads that up for a brand is really interesting because, there's not a lot of that happens in the sneaker space. And what does happens, kind of behind the scenes. Like I guess another shameless plug a little bit here, but like recently, Mike Guillory, who co-hosts the Sneaker History podcast with me, interviewed the woman from Vans who was in charge of basically archiving their entire, and managing their entire archive of product. And like the whole idea of that is so, think of one person doing that for an entire brand. Now think of like what the community would do, what the Porsche community has done, kind of to Eric's point, almost force the hand of the brand because there's so many people that care so deeply about this stuff. And man, it gets me excited to think that sneakers could have something like that someday. And honestly, every other car brand, like there's, we're all nerds about these things. So like, just find the people that you're nerding out about that same thing. And now you go and start to kind of preserve the history there. And next thing you know, the brand's like, hey, that's a great idea. How can we support? Or how do, like come in and be a part of it?
Yeah. Only luxury brands do this kind of customization thing, right? I mean, I guess everyone like Ford and Chevy, they do like versions of cars, but it feels like what you're explaining seems much more thoughtful, I guess, from the luxury car side of things.
At this level, that's pretty accurate. At this level, yes. That currently Porsche is really leading the way in terms of anything remotely close to this. And I think part of that is, look, let's be real. Like there's the Mustang is probably the most popular car to modifying the entire world. Camaros, things like that as well. But those types of cars will always have, a soft spot in a car guy's heart, whatever it is. But the bulk of the people that go out and buy a Mustang, buy a Camaro, whatever, they're not going to have the same kind of approach to redoing one to original form through the brand. And I think maybe part of that is, look, a lot of these guys that are Porsche guys also have really rare Mustangs. They're going to be the ones that get the new GTD. They're going to be the ones that had the Ford GT, et cetera. But your quote unquote run of the mill normal cars, most of the people buying that don't have the expendable income. And that's really what it comes down to. I mean, I don't even have the means to go take, when I had my GT3, that was me like at the pinnacle of saying, hey, I'm making some decent coin now doing what I love. I'm all in on this. I didn't have 10 other Porsches in my garage, and I didn't have, plans to like send it off and have it completely restored because I didn't have the means for that, But my point in saying that is a lot of the folks, these true collectors, they're the ones that do have that kind of money that can support a program like that with Porsche. So whether that ultimately ends up gravitating down to, I don't want to say down, it sounds like I'm talking down on it, I'm not, but whether it starts making its way to more normal vehicles, maybe we'll see a version of that. But I don't see anybody willing to fork over 6 figures to bring their 85 notchback LX back to life. You know what I mean? Like it's a different demographic, I think.
Yeah. Different tax bracket.
Yeah, exactly. I think it is very much like on the luxury side too. You have to have a product, thinking about the sneaker thing, you have to have a product that is thought of as worthy of keeping around, like to a lot of people nowadays, sneakers are disposable. You have dozens of them or whatever, and you just move on to the next one whenever the time comes. And there's a different thought process around that completely for, cars in general, but like for a brand to embrace that, most brands will look at it and say, I'll pick on Honda because I, have most fondness for them. But, if Honda came back and said, hey, we're going to help you restore your Integra, we're going to make some parts that we know you guys need to make it back to the original specs. Yeah. Their first thought would be, is this gonna prevent someone from buying a new car from us? Not, I'm doing this because these people have supported our brand for 40 years. And that's the big shift, right? The investment in the people and the community of Porsche owners is what is going to drive Porsche owners and potential Porsche owners to buy new Porsches down the road, in my opinion. It's a marketing expense that makes 100% sense to me as somebody who works on that side of the business typically, but it will be a hard sell for anybody else to go down this path for sure.
I feel like, there's, and we'll wrap up here because we get long-winded when we start talking about stuff like this, but it'll be another podcast. But I feel like, I think maybe there's some sort of version of that where they incentivize people with, to support the fact that somebody has owned, 10, 15 different Hondas throughout the years and supported the brand wholeheartedly and wants to redo their CRX or their, Integra or something like that. Maybe there's some sort of incentive program where they not only support you with like wholesale pricing on parts for you to redo it yourself, but also, if you allow them to utilize, the post version pictures of your vehicle for their marketing, maybe it's worth, 5 or 10% discount on the purchase of a new one, something like that. When you start thinking about the economies of it all, I'm spitballing here, but maybe there's a way where it's a win-win for both people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think we're giving away too much. Honda, call us for a consultation.
For real, these exactly. Yeah, we need to be paid for all these ideas.
Yeah, giving away too much. Anyway, great episode, guys. I love that we got into this. This is such a good episode. If you guys have been listening, you know what you're supposed to do. You got to go rate us 5 stars and let people
Yes,
know that
indeed.
you enjoyed the show. Leave us a review. We're on all the places, Google, Apple, Spotify. We're all up in your RSS feed.
We're going to
for
start
lack of a better
releasing
word.
episodes on cassette tape and CD, compact disc
CDs,
as well,
compact
for those
disc,
that are buying into the retro thing.
We're getting it together. As always, we definitely appreciate you guys. Thank you for listening to the Cars and Kicks podcast. I am Jacques Slade. I am just the sneaker guy here on the show, learning more and more about the way that cars and kicks interact and the love language that there is between them. But I couldn't do this on my own, and that's why I have these two. My man Nick, go ahead, tell them where they can find you.
At Nick Engvall on all the platforms. I'm kind of the crossover here between, keep these guys connected to the subject matters that I tend to go long-winded on both sides. So they basically keep me in check. But Eric, let them know how they can find you.
Yeah, I'm Eric, the car guy. I'm just going to change my handle, Eric, the car guy. No,
Eric, the
I'm
car guy.
Eric Valdez. You can find me everywhere with just my name, ErikValdez. And one last little shout out I forgot to mention, because we got to talk about cars and kicks, but my show premiered this last
that's
Monday.
right.
By the time you hear this episode, you can watch the third episode, because we premiered with the first two episodes of our final season of Superman and Lois. So that's back on your TV screens. Would love y'all's support. That show has been a big part of my life for the past 4 years, and the fans have been amazing. So if you guys have not watched it yet, if you're new to me and new to this world, just coming to us from the Cars and Kicks world, go out, watch the show. If you've been watching it and you're listening to this podcast because of that, I thank you so much for supporting me and following all along on my creative journey. So shouts out to all y'all. Thank y'all for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Peace.
Peace.